make the news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's September 20th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Choi Ji-hee.
Good morning, Yoon.
Good morning, and Kim Si-young.
Good morning, Grace.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has wrapped up his 6-day trip to Russia, and media outlets are paying attention to how the delegation that tagged along carried expensive designer handbags, despite the regime's crackdown on what it calls bourgeois culture. NK News pointed to how North Korea's foreign minister, Choi Sun-hee, was carrying a rare Gucci handbag that's thought to be worth around $10,000. Also, Kim Yo-jong, the leader's sister, appeared with a black Dior handbag that retails for $7,000. Meanwhile, according to last year's UN report, over 10 million North Koreans are suffering from hunger and malnourishment. Moving on, Tesla's co-founder Elon Musk recently had a meeting with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan discussing the possibility of building Tesla's 7th factory there. During the meeting, Musk was seen holding his young son X on his lap. The Insider reported how the billionaire had an awkward moment with the Turkish president when he was asked where Musk's wife was. To that, Musk said he was separated and therefore took care of his own children. Musk has been outspoken on his view that people should have more children to prevent the world's population from collapsing. He currently has 10 known children with 3 different women. And protecting teachers and strengthening their rights in the classroom has been a top priority in South Korea following the deaths of young teachers. That's why the Seoul Office of Education on Tuesday proposed that all elementary schools will record calls from parents. Under the latest plan, a pilot chatbot service will be launched in December. This chatbot will deal with parents' complaints 24/7. If all goes well, the service will be adopted to all elementary, middle, and high schools in the capital in March. Now, these policies aim to better protect teachers from having to directly experience any verbal or mental abuse from parents. When looking into incidents where young teachers took their own lives, many had experienced struggling to deal with abusive parents over the phone. By the end of next year, all elementary schools in Seoul will have phone recorders, and parents must book meetings with teachers via a mobile app to come to direct contact with them. A video monitoring system will also be installed at meeting rooms to stop parents from verbally or physically assaulting teachers. And Seoul's education office also plans to introduce a legal support system. This means a lawyer will be designated to each school to provide legal counseling to teachers. Now, these measures are the latest, actually. Seoul's education ministry announced them yesterday. What did you think about them, Xiang?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is amazing. Great ideas to actually protect the rights of teachers as well, you know, the right not to be abused verbally or even physically, as we've seen in the recent cases. And I think it's a case of a good adaptation of actual new technologies. But I think we should also, even though there's, you know, obviously some of the more traumatizing even stories of young teachers taking their own lives, I think it's good if we can actually consider both sides of the story now and then. Because in Korea, parents' generation, even my generation, have actually had students suffering from physical abuse from the teachers. You know, even for me, I was beaten up, not beaten up, but, you know, always slaps on the face, pulling of the ears, all sorts of physical abuse, you know, which I thought was a normal thing growing up as a student here. And young parents these days know of these things, that the abuse they've gone through from teachers, and they kind of are worried about it in a sense. So they'll be more overly protective, they'll be calling the teachers more, demanding more things, just to be sure. So I also do kind of understand. I've thought a lot about the issue of teachers suffering as well as the parent side of view, because we've got to see it from both sides.
Right. That's a very good thing. Try to take a neutral perspective towards it. But as you know, times have changed, and it's really worth noting that not only should students' rights be protected, but teachers' rights should be protected as well.
Right.
But what else do you think needs to be done in order to protect both students and teachers in classrooms?
Well, first of all, I think all these measures are very thoughtful, and they can build a good framework to protect teachers in the first place. From parents and students who are being very disrespectful towards them. But then I feel like they can't really solve the issue fundamentally if the attitudes and the awareness among parents and students don't change, because these measures per se can't really change that themselves, right? Because if these attitudes and thoughts of the teacher, of the parents don't change, then any of those disrespectful and violent words and behaviors can happen anywhere, even outside these meeting rooms and counseling
Like
rooms.
most conflicts, it's the root of the problem, I think, is always perspective.
Yes.
And you need to raise awareness on how to change such perceptions in order to take care of the whole problem rather than just implementing these measures. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's now head into today's discussion topic. Around 1 out of 4 South Koreans are raising pet animals, and they're also spending an average $123 per month on them. As the country is becoming more pet-friendly, perceptions on how to view them has definitely changed. Take a look at the screen to find out more. For centuries, dogs have been called a man's best friend. Korea is home to 15 million households with pets, mostly dogs, and it seems Korea is now accepting pet dogs as another member of the family. Particularly, millennials and Gen Z, who are more animal rights conscious than the previous generation. But young people viewing their pet animals as family has often ruffled the feathers of the older generation. Mainly because for them, the concept of pet wasn't strong. They viewed them as creatures who should protect their property. Today we're going to discuss how perception towards our pets have changed, mainly with our generation leading this evolving pet culture. And see, we've mentioned this on the show as well, but I also have 2 Malteses, but I know you have a very cute pet Maltese named Cherry.
Yes.
So tell us how millennials and Gen Z like yourself who have a pet are viewing them compared to the older generation.
Sure. So, I mean, it's very evident that owning a pet means something completely different to millennials and Gen Z than it did for the older generations. Nowadays, pets are viewed as part of the family rather than just a property or a mere possession. In fact, we have some statistics, very interesting, that reflects this shift in perception between these different generations. So on the screen, there are 2 pie graphs that illustrate the preference of 2 generations when it comes to attending either their pets or grandparents' funerals if both were to happen at the same time. Now, it's a very difficult question, really. But among the millennials, a higher percentage of people opted to attend their pet's funeral instead of their parents.
You know, when we first saw this stat, we were talking in the meeting room, and it was divided into 2. Like a group of people who didn't have any pets were like, how could you do that? You need to go to your grandparents' funeral. But then those with pets, like myself, I could sort of understand why this is a contemplating issue. Because they are also an extension of your family. But where do you stand on that issue, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, so as you were talking about, good point you mentioned, the perception of owning a pet. You know, if you have a pet, you can really understand why people are so keen and why they find, you know, your dog or your cat so adorable and you got to go home early.
Exactly.
You know, look at them as well. But the perception towards pets in Korea have changed in recent years. You know, previously, even our parents' generation, we've seen, you know, if you had a dog in your house, it'd be mostly a guard dog, which would be fed leftovers from the households, and just to look after just from robberies and things like that. And cats weren't even as big as pets in general. But now, as you can see on the screens, you know, pets are considered as emotional support beings, giving you immense pleasure as well as stability in your busy life schedules as a modern person. And many regard pets as family members to the extent that, according to research, around 1 out of 4 millennials and Gen Zs will take days off from work for their pet's funeral. So you can see on the screen some of the facilities we have in South Korea for the funeral services of your pet animals.
Right, and as you mentioned, Xiong, we're now seeing more funeral services for pets come about, but I think that's a drastic change in the industry as well.
Exactly.
Because as you mentioned, the older generation just perceived them as like guard dogs, I guess, or guard creatures, and they didn't really find the need for a funeral. But to talk about these changing perceptions, we asked the same question to our viewers. We asked what they would do if they had to choose to go to their grandparents' funeral first or one for their pets. Here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen to find out what our global viewers had to say. Let's start with Tiris Bell. In the U.S., there are pet cemeteries. Owners can even choose to be buried with their pet when they die too. I love my dog, but my human family members take priority. Tasmia said, the pet funeral culture doesn't exist in Bangladesh. I would never struggle if my pet passed away on the same day as my relative because funerals takes less time in my country and it's not performed at the very moment of when a person dies. But I will attend my relative's funeral first and then I will take care of what needs to be done for my pet. Madra Remy said, we just bury cats pretty much same as we bury the deceased, but if there's a situation where both died, surely we'll handle the human first and then the cat. So I guess our viewers are more tilted towards taking care of their human family members compared to the graph where we saw 15%, was it? Going to their pets' funerals first as well.
You guys are both pet owners. Do you think, what would you choose if that was the case?
Oh, that's a really tough question. What would you do, Jihi?
It's a tough question, but I mean, human funerals, in Korea at least, we have the culture or tradition of holding it for 3 days, right? So I would...
But let's say it's
my
actually your great grandparents over and your dogs. What would you?
Oh gosh, you're putting me in the spot, and this is so hard
It's such
to
a difficult
answer.
question. You know, for me too, I would have to contemplate. But then if you think about it, your grandparents, there's a lot of relatives there, so maybe.
Oh,
but then I wouldn't know.
I
would attend for
I
sure.
think your grandparents are watching this as well.
I know. You know what? This is such a hard question.
It is.
But I think the moral of the story is that's how important pets are in our lives, and we're
yeah.
perceiving them as family. And for people to be even thinking about this type of scenario definitely shows how much our perceptions towards pets have changed. We're now considering them to be a big part of our family. And aside from throwing funerals for our pets and taking pet loss days off work, though, are there any other indicators pointing to how much we love our pets these days?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best indicators is the sheer size and scale of the pet-related commercial markets. So, I mean, the pet industry, sometimes referred to as pet economy, have already doubled since 2017 to 2022 in South Korea. What used to be around $1.7 billion market has now grown to around $4 billion in the space of 6 years. COVID-19 also took a big role in the pet industry as many adopted new pets due to COVID blues, which led to a whole wave of new products from human-grade pet foods, as you just saw, you know, pet ice creams, pet yogurts, pet champagnes even, to insurances and travel packages for your pet animals. So all indicating the increase in Koreans' love for your pets.
Right, we're seeing the pet economy grow. Any other indicators, though?
Well, recently, a new public pool was opened, temporarily, that is, and for free, yes, in Tuksum Hangang Park.
Wow.
This is really a groundbreaking move that extends public spaces to not just children, but also dogs. So this really is a reflection that we all think of dogs as an extension of the human family. Now, as you see, dog owners bring their dogs to this space to let them enjoy the pool, swim, and socialize with other dogs. They're so cute.
That is adorable.
Additionally, Seoul City has also unveiled its Design 2.0 initiative, which aims to create a city that is friendly to both pets and their owners. So this really signifies that our culture with our pets has really greatly changed these days.
A pool once designated for kids are now including dogs and like pets, which shows that our pets could be our children.
Yes.
And I think another indicator is that instead of using words like we buy a pet from a shop, we're now saying we adopt one, right? Could you guys tell us about this concept and how it's changed?
Sure. So around 20 years ago, pet shops were the go-to place for people who were looking to, own a furry friend. However, due to the association of pet shops with puppy mills, the unethical breeding practices really gained negative reputation among people, and consequently adoption from shelters has become a better alternative to own a dog. And the adoption trend has grown from a mere 5%, that was back in 2020, to 11% in 2022. Although the number is still very small, this change signifies a huge shift from the past towards the perception of how we actually get to own a pet.
Hopefully we'll see the numbers boost up because we know the unethical sides of pet shops, and we'll be talking about that in one of our later episodes. But Xion, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, as Ji mentioned and suggested with the poll, the actual statistics, the adoption rate in South Korea is still extremely low. Most people actually prefer to buy a purebred, well-behaved, potty-trained, shop window dogs and cats, which are obviously, you know, a lot more well presented and seemingly more cute, more beautiful than shelter animals. So I mean, I personally know many who's adopted from shelters here, and they are just the most wonderful pets as well. I mean, they are very well behaved. Of course, they do suffer from some trauma as well, but as time passes, they become your best friend and really as good as any shop sold pets. And in Korean shelters, dog shelters, 41.5% of animals actually die inside the shelter without ever leaving it. Amongst them, 15.7% are from artificial euthanasia as well. So you can see how it's a grave matter where a lot of animal life is lost in these pet shelters, dog shelters in South Korea as well.
For sure. And though our perception towards pets have changed and we're now accepting them as family members, we're still seeing so many pet abuse cases on the news.
Definitely.
And animal rights is an area.
Abandonment.
Exactly, abandonment, but also like physical abuse. So animal rights is an area that needs more work. And would you guys agree with that statement?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, recently, the Animal Protection Act was amended for the first time in 31 years this year. And the penalties for unauthorized pet businesses, for example, have been significantly increased in the country. And pet owners are now obligated to really comply with stronger pet-related rules and measures and mandatory animal registration as well. However, like these penalties for animal abuse is still very weak. So we really need to work on that. And what's positive is that our generation and many activist groups, they are working towards raising the awareness of the importance of protecting animal rights these days.
Right, and to find out what young people abroad think about their pets and their respective countries' pet culture, we're going to include a fellow millennial from Australia in our talks. We'll talk to her right after this. We're going to include a fellow millennial from Australia in our talks. It's Alexandra Fame, who's joining us with her cute little friend, Waffle. Welcome back on our show, Alexandra.
Hello,
Thank you so
Alex
much for having
and
us.
Waffle.
All right, so, you know, we can't just, we have to pay attention to Waffle. They're so adorable. How long has it been since you brought Waffle home?
We adopted him in April last year, so we've had him for a year and a half, and we got him when he was 2 months old. So he's been with us since he's a little baby.
Well, Alex, is Waffle your first pet? I mean, what does he mean to you if he is?
Well, I had a family dog. Her name was Cookie Monster, so I grew up with a pet. But this is the first puppy that my partner and I have had together. And so he's like our son. He's our best friend, and he's a really good boy. So we're blessed to have him, and he completely changed our lives. Completely. Made it so much better. Yes.
I can imagine.
Yeah, of course. And Waffle seems really well behaved as well. You did mention that he's usually a little bit more naughty, but he's really behaving well today. And I mean, you've heard how we perceive pets in South Korea, the sort of growing trend in actually liking and taking care of the pets, more the pet economy and things like that. What do people in Australia think about it? Are there similar cultures around pets in Australia, would you say?
Australians love animals in general, and pets are family. Especially in the last few years, like we've always loved pets. They've always been the biggest part of our hearts, but I think since the pandemic, when people were really lonely and they needed a friend, it's the perfect answer, really, because they're just the best. And we, especially in where I live, in my city of Melbourne, we are obsessed with pets. So they are allowed in shops, in cafes, in pubs. They're not allowed in supermarkets. That's the only place. But yeah, they are so welcomed and encouraged to just join you everywhere. We have great pet insurance, and Victoria and Western Australia also banned puppy mills and puppy farms.
Fantastic.
So we've made big efforts to make sure that when you adopt a dog, it's ethically and there's no, mistreatment of animals. So we have a long way to go, but we certainly love our pets in Australia.
Right. Alex, you mentioned a lot of different policies that Australia is doing to ensure a better and safer environment for pets, but is there one thing that you would like to see improve in the future?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is because only 2 states in Australia have banned puppy farms, I think the whole country needs to step up and do the same thing because it's one of the most traumatic things to see, and it will absolutely change the happiness and the welfare of all of these little pets because that's the last thing you want is to think of them, in pain. And considering how much we love them as well, it just feels like a natural step. So that's the biggest thing I think Australia needs to do. But of course, there are so many other things that we need to introduce. I think that having pet insurance, as a standard is important. And we do have fantastic vets and amazing services for dogs. So I think getting the big stuff out of the way and all of the natural stuff will come next.
All right, Alex, we'll hopefully see that for a better world for dogs like Waffle out there.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, they deserve the best.
All right, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you so much for having us. You say bye-bye.
Bye. Now, expanding on the last question I just asked Alex, would you like to tell me, Xiong, on what would you like to see to ensure a safer and pet environment and culture here in Korea?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the notion of animal rights also has been widespread in Korea already. People treat dogs and cats and other pets as their family members already, although we've seen some severe cases of abuse, abandonment as well. But if I make a few suggestions to actually systematically improve the situation, I think first, more financial and public support for animal shelters and rescue organizations is necessary.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are ones that are run by the government as well as public funded ones, as well as private shelters that I've volunteered at as well. And a lot of the times, pets suffer from artificial euthanasia, and actually the culture of adopting pets rather than buying them from shops, I think, is the critical thing we should make change in South Korean pet culture, as heard from Alex as well.
Yeah.
Right, and as a pet owner, what would you like to say?
Respect for each other, the pet owners and non-pet owners. Respect each other, keep the etiquettes, and to make a harmonious society where we can live with our pets happily.
Exactly. So we've got to be able to understand both of the perceptions. It's very different, as we say, as we said before. If you don't have a pet, you might be thinking, why is this lady having a pet in a trolley and
trolley
things like
or
that?
wearing clothes and stuff
Many
like
things
that.
to dispute about, but
I think we mentioned this in the very beginning of our newsfeed, but it always comes down to perception with these
Exactly.
issues. So maybe raising more awareness is the right way to go. In the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Chi Ji-hee
thank you.
and Kim Xiang.
My pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
New Generation.